record, and we are live. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a few psukim into Perek Yud Tet, number 19. I'm going to start again at the beginning just to read the first few so we get into it. But before we do, I want to show you, because as I was going through this Perek, it was very obvious that it was broken down. It's easy to break it down into certain chunks that'll make it easy for us to see what's coming up. So the first four psukim, plus a little of 5 and 7 through 7, we actually did last week. It's Chizkiyahu's reaction to the report of sending messengers to Yeshayahu, his reaction to the report and sending messengers to Yeshayahu for his help as a Navi, as a prophet. Then there's a very brief, basically a pasuk and a half, 2 psukim of a prophecy from Yeshayahu. The reason I point out it's brief is we'll see in a couple lines. Then what happens is the prophecy of Yeshayahu comes true, which we will see. Sancheriv is going to be kind of diverted and not going to come straight to Yerushalayim, and that's part of the prophecy. And in 8 through 13, Sancheriv is going to send messages of warnings to Chizkiyahu. Whatever you heard Rav Shakeh say to the 3 messengers or the 3 representatives of the king is kind of going to be repeated, but a little bit more severe way in Sancheriv's message to the king himself. Now that kind of shakes Chizkiyahu, and what he will do in 14 to 19, Yudal to Yutet, he's going to run to the Beit HaMikdash, he's going to daven, which he didn't do the first time, but now he's going to daven. Then it's starting in Pasuk Kaf for a very long prophecy, 14 psukim. Now it's not long compared to Sefer Yeshayahu, but as far as what we've seen and what we'll see in the future, it's a relatively long prophecy of Yeshayahu. We may or may not get to it tonight, and even if we do, I probably will just read and translate and not get into it, because we need to do that in a 1 unit or 2 units and not just start a couple of psukim, because it's a lot of, for those of you who've learned Yeshayahu, and we've picked out a few psukim here and there, it's written in very poetic language. It's very deep. It's a lot to digest. So we'll see if we get to it. And then the last couple of psukim of the Perek will deal with the death of Sancheriv. So that's this chapter. It's a relatively long chapter, but I wanted to have this overview first. So let's take a look and start now with the beginning of Perek 19, Perek Yud Tet Melachim Bet. Vayiki shmoa hamelech Chizkiyahu vayikrat begadav. It was when King Chizkiyahu heard what Rav Shakeh had said to his 3 people and to the general populace. Vayikrat begadav, he tore his clothing. Remember, we said last week that was as a result of him hearing Hashem being cursed, which we say blessed. You don't say cursed. Vayitkas basak, and he put on sackcloth. Vayavo Beit Hashem, and he came to the Beit HaMikdash. He didn't daven there. That's going to be the second go round. Then pasuk bet. We're beginning, for those who are just joining us, we're rereading the first couple of psukim in Perek Yud Tet, and all I've done so far is give an overview of the chapter. You'll see on the tape if you decide to look at it later. I keep calling it a tape. I know it's not a tape, and I'm speaking like in 1976, but that's okay. Bet number 2. Vayishlach Eliakim asher habayit v'shevna hasofer v'tziknei hakohanim. So now Chizkiyahu sends 3 people: Eliakim, Shevna, and some of the elders of the Kohanim. Mitkasim b'sakim, they were wearing sackcloth. El Yeshayahu Hanavi ben Amoz, sent them to Yeshayahu ben Amoz, the Navi. Vayamru elav, and they said to him, Ko amar Chizkiyahu, so has Chizkiyahu said, Yom tzara v'tochecha une'atza yom hazeh, ki ba'u banim ad mashber v'choach ein leleida. Again, just free translation right now, because we really did do this last week, that it's a very difficult, a very trying time for Am Yisrael, and your children, meaning Am Yisrael, are at the point like a woman about to give birth, but who doesn't have the strength to give birth. Dalid, Ulai yishma Hashem elokecha ad kol divrei Rav Shakeh. Maybe Hashem will hear the words of Rav Shakeh, Asher shalacho melech Ashur adonav v'charef Elohim chai, who Rav Shakeh was sent by the king of Assyria to curse the living God. Ochiach bedvarim asher shama Hashem elokecha nasata tfilat bad asherit hanimtza'a. So he says, again, I know we did this last week, just as a brief reminder, that he's their message from Chizkiyahu to Ishayahu is, look, we need you to do us a favor. We need you to do something here, because the king of Assyria has made some very horrific statements, including blessing God, quote, and we need you to daven on our behalf to Hashem for those who are remaining. The remainder means those people who were not sent into Galut, or some of the cities that had already been pillaged by Sancherib's people. Those Yerushalayim itself had not been. Pasuk Hey, number 5. Vayavo Abdei HaMelech Chizkiyahu Eli Yeshayahu. The servants of King Chizkiyahu came to Yeshayahu. Vayomer lehem Yeshayahu, and Yeshayahu said to them as the response, Kol tomrun el Adonechem. This is what you should say to your master. Ko amar Hashem. Hashem has said the following: Al tira, don't be afraid. Bipnei advarim asher shamata, because of the words that you heard. Asher gidfu narei melech Ashur oti, that these children of the king of Ashur have blessed me. So one thing I didn't point out last week was how he, in a very derisive fashion, refers to Rav Shakeh and the others who preceded him. He said, a bunch of kids, a bunch of little juvenile delinquents. Don't worry about what they said. Now, I want to put something in perspective. We're used to reading Chumash and Navi, and we hear messages from Hashem all the time that are recorded. Forget about the fact that we hear our own messages. That's its own discussion. But that we hear a Navi or someone saying to another person a message from Hashem. But I want to put that in perspective. Imagine you have a business deal that you're about to embark on, and it could be worth millions of shekel. But if you mess up and you do something just a little wrong, you stand to lose, if not all, a lot of the money. And you may have a spouse or a friend or a confidant that says to you, don't worry, look, you've done all your homework, everything's going to be fine. But inside you, you still have that doubt potentially. So what happens? You go into the deal, but with that nagging doubt. Imagine that it can't happen because we don't have, Hashem doesn't come to us directly, that you had the level of prophecy. Now Hashem says to you, you're going into that business deal tomorrow, child's play. Don't worry about it at all. I got your back. How are you going to feel? So assuming that you're not someone who questions the existence of God, but for whatever reason you were able to absolutely verify that was Hashem you were was speaking to you, you've just been getting an assurance that's like a massive assurance that, okay, I have nothing to worry about. Hashem's helping me. Truth is that we really do have that assurance. We really do. But one day we talk about this a little bit more in depth, I think, not now, but what does that mean that we have Hashem? It says Hashem tzilcha yadi minecha, Hashem's a shadow on the right side. When we include Hashem in our equation, it makes a very big difference. And that's what's happening here as well. Now, I know that many of you, all of you listening tonight, are those kinds of people that one way or another you include Hashem in your equation. But I heard a very interesting line from, I don't remember who the speaker was, not that long ago, a few months ago maybe. He said that a person, God forbid, is sick, and they go to the doctor and they sit in the waiting room for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and they're thinking, oh yeah, I just hope this doctor knows what he's doing. I hope he finds what's wrong with me. I hope I get the right medicine. But it's also important at that same time to say, Hashem, help this doctor. Hashem, make sure he find the right problem. Hashem, make sure he gives me the right medicine, to include Hashem in the equation. And that's pretty much what Chizkiyahu is doing here as well. He isn't turning right away to Hashem. He will. But he's first turning to the Navi to talk to Hashem on his behalf and then report back. And what is the report? What is it that Yeshayahu tells these people to go back to Chizkiyahu? Look at Pasuk Zayin, number 7. Hineni noten bo ruach v'shama shemua v'shav le'aretzo. This is where we left off last week. That he will hear your enemy. Could be Sancheriv. Is going to hear a message, some rumor, and he's going to go back to his country. And then I will cause him to die by the sword in his own land. So what exactly does this business mean about a rumor, and he's going to die in his own land? So let's take a look at the next slide. I'm going to start down here where it says V'shama Shmua. I'll make this one a little bit bigger. V'shama Shmua lo tiyeh siba mamashit lahalichato zo. He's telling him, look, when Sancheriv is going to leave the land of Israel and go to wherever he's going to go, which we're going to see, he's going to go to battle with the king of Cush. There's not going to be a real reason for that to happen. It's going to be based on false intel. Hu yishaneh tochniotav al smach shmua bilvad. He's going to change his tactics, his plans, based merely on a rumor. Hainu yediyah bilti mevuseset ubilti mamashit, meaning on information that is unfounded, unsubstantiated. She'ilu haya noten lev lachkorota, because had he really investigated the rumor he will hear, which is that there's another king coming to attack him, lo haya zaz mimkomo, he wouldn't have left. Kfi sheitbarer, as it will become clear, mina me'orot shelachar mikein, the various events that happen afterwards, hakavana ita lishmua shiatza tarhaka melech Kush. What he's referring to, we're going to see in a few psukim, is he's going to hear the Tarhaka, king of Cush, coming lihilachemito, to fight with him. Kidelahalan, pasuk tet, as we're going to see very shortly in pasuk tet. Af shezehaya nachon, even though that was true, lo haya kol tzarech shemelech Ashur yetzeh be'atzmo v'lemilchama zo. There was no need for the king of Assyria himself, bichodo uvatzmo, in quotes, to go out to this battle. Ki melech Cush lo haya chazak kol kach, because he wasn't all that smart, that strong. Now, imagine that, using modern terms, that it wasn't, Russia coming up against you. It was Micronesia, but they won't, because they're our best friends in the world, probably.
Djibouti.
What's that?
Djibouti.
Yes. Ulam mipnei Hashem natan pacha belev melech Ashur, but because Hashem placed fear into the heart of the king of Assyria, Sancheriv, Yatzahu atzmo lemilchama, he went out to that battle. And what's going to happen? V'shav le'artzo, he's going to return to his land. V'shav yashuv me'atzmo, he's going to personally return to Assyria. V'lo yikel yedei b'nei Yehuda, he's not going to get killed by the Jews. Ki mu'at haya ha'am shenishar b'dei Chizkiyahu, because there were not a lot of Jews left now in Judea and Yehuda. V'chein kedei shelo yitzga'u Yisrael lomar she'adam hoshia lahem. Very important point he makes here. That why does Hashem is causing the plans of Chizkiyahu, of Sancheriv, to get messed up? Why doesn't he just have Sancheriv, the bad guy, fall at the hands of the Jews? So he says, because he doesn't want to put any level of pride, haughtiness, into the hearts of the Jews. Said, look, we were able to overcome this king of Assyria, this guy who said he did this and he did this and he did this. Easy, we knocked him off. Hashem doesn't want that. He wants him to die in his own land. Let's take a look now at pasuk chet, number 8. Vayashav Rav Shakeh. Rav Shakeh returned. Vayimtzat melech Ashur nilchama livna. He came back and he found that there was a battle waging between the king of Assyria against Livna. Ki shama ki nasami Lachish, because Rav Shakeh heard that Sancheriv left Lachish and he went from Lachish to do this particular war. So he went to find him, I guess ostensibly to report back to him. Now, Vayishma, and he heard, he meaning Sancheriv, heard, pasuk tet, number 9, al Tirhaka melech Cush lemor. He heard about this king, what an unusual name, Tirhaka, the king of Cush, saying, Hine yatsa lehilachem itach. He has come out to wage war against you. This is the false rumor that was floated on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok, whatever else he got out there. And thank God I'm off of everything at the moment for the most part. That this man, Tirhaka, king of Cush, was coming to do battle with the Assyrians. Vayashov vayishlach malachim. He returned, meaning Sancheriv goes back because he's now going to do battle ostensibly with Tirhaka instead of going against the Jews at the moment. Vayishlach malachim, and in the meantime, while he's going to the battlefield to fight against Tirhaka, he doesn't want to leave the Jews kind of hanging. Chas v'shalom, he needs to make sure he does something to them or says something. He sends messengers, El Chizkiyahu lemor. He sends messengers to Chizkiyahu the king, or the Chizkiyahu, saying the following. Now the next 1, 2, 3, 3 psukim are the, or 3 or 4, are the words of Sancheriv directly to Chizkiyahu. Remember, why am I pointing that out? Because we saw in the beginning, in the last chapter, that Rav Shakeh spoke indirectly to the king. The message came to the king, but now Chizkiyahu basically is talking king to king, as it were. And here's the message that he sends. Pasuk Yud, number 10. Actually, before we do Pasuk Yud, I want to take a look at another slide. It said in the last Pasuk in Chet that Rav Shakeh came back, and there was this little bit, it's not a very 100% clear Pasuk. It says, Vayintza et melech Ashur, he found the king of Assyria fighting. Lo matza oto belachish hasmucha liYerushalayim. He didn't find Sancheriv in Lachish, which was near Yerushalayim. Shemimena yatza, he left from there originally. The Sancheriv left there. And he was forced to go to Livna, which was at a greater distance. Livna lo hayta az me'eretz Yehuda, and that wasn't even the area of Yehuda. And also its inhabitants were not even Jewish. Because of this, the amount of time it took Rav Shakeh to actually find and meet up with Chizkiyahu, with Sancheriv, took a lot longer than he expected. In the meantime, this new rumor came to the king of Assyria, and he also left from there. Okay, so now let's take a look at, again, Pasuk Yud, number 10. This is what you're going to, this is the message you're going to send to King Chizkiyahu, the king of Chizkiyahu, king of Yehuda. Al yashiacha Elohecha asher boteach bo lemor. Lotinat. Okay, I'm going to stop it there. I'll finish the pasuk. Lotinaten Yerushalayim biad melech Ashur. If you remember, Rav Shakeh told the people, the king and the general populace, don't let Chizkiyahu deceive you into thinking that God's going to save you. Forget about it. Now, Sancheriv says to King Chizkiyahu, don't let God deceive you into thinking about being the God that you depend upon, and make you believe that he's not going to allow Yerushalayim to fall in the hands of the king of Assyria. I can't think of a greater slap in the face, kiviyachol, to Hashem than the king of Assyria is saying right here. He's basically saying, God's going to deceive you. Chas v'shalom, to think something like that. But from his perspective, that's exactly what he thinks is going to happen here. Next pasuk, Yud Aleph, number 11. Now he's going to go on this tear for a couple of psukim of complete gava, of haughtiness, and look at who I am. Hine ata shamata et asher asu malchei Ashur v'haratzot lachavimam v'atati natzel. You've heard about all those things that the kings of Assyria have done to all the various lands, and they've wiped them out. And you think you're going to be saved? Now, let's take a look again at a map. And we're going to look at this map twice. Okay. Remember, we've seen this map before, that the dark green and the light green, basically over different time periods, was the Assyrian empire, was Ashur. And the vast amounts of land that it covered, let's make it a little bit smaller actually. And here's Yehuda. And if he conquered all these lands, all this, and your little Yehuda, forget it. And by the way, it goes much lower than this too, and further up. I just didn't get the whole screenshot. I'm gonna keep this up here for a minute because we're gonna need it in a second. He says, so don't think that if all these other countries fell to me, you're not going to fall also. Obviously you are. You'd bet. Have the gods of these other nations saved them? Where were the places he conquered? At Gozan, at Haran, Retzef, Ufne Eden, Asher Bit Lasha. Look at the map here for a moment. I made a point of some arrows. Here's Gozan, Haran. Here's Arpad, which is also mentioned in the next pasuk. Hamat, which is also mentioned in the next pasuk. Yud Gimel. Ayo Melech Hamat. Where's the king of Hamat? Umelech Arpad. Where's the king of Arpad? Umelech La'ir Svarvayim. Hena Ve'iva, which I didn't find on the maps. He says, look, I'm going to list you all the places that I, King Sancheriv, so elegantly, so wonderfully have wiped off the face of the earth. They had kings, they had their idols, their kings didn't save them, the gods didn't save them. Who are you? You're nobody, you're a fly. So another reason to take a look at this map that we looked at a few weeks ago is that when the northern kingdom over here, it says Samaria, this area over here, when they went into Galut, again, some of these cities that he mentions here, were also where when the Jews went into Galut. They went even further, but they went generally in this area up here. Okay, and here's Babylon. That's down the road. Okay, let's take it off of here and go back into the text. So when Rav Shakeh gave his report in the last chapter, and the people, the king's people, Chizkiyahu's men, come back to him to report. Chizkiyahu is devastated. He's upset that he heard about the cursing of God. Then he's upset that he hears this terrible thing that, look, this could be real. We could be really some really deep trouble here. Now the message is coming directly to him from the actual king of Assyria. He takes a different tactic. What does he now do? Take a look at Pasuk Yud Daled, please, number 14. This is going to be the reaction of Chizkiyahu. Vayikach Chizkiyahu et hasofrim hasfarim miyad malachim vayikraem. Evidently, it wasn't just when I have too many names I have to keep in mind. It wasn't just when Sancheriv sent messengers with these words, but he actually had it in writing. He sent letters to the king. So now he takes these sfarim, these books, which would be the modern term, but these letters from these messengers, Vayikraem, and he read them. Okay, not Vayikraem with an ayin. He didn't tear them. He read them. Vaya'al Beit Hashem, and he went up to the house of God, meaning he went to the Beit Hamikdash. Vayifraseu Chizkiyahu lifnei Hashem, and he spread it or them in front of God. What does that mean? What does that mean he did? So let's pretend for a minute that this is what was written to him. He basically said, look at this. Look at what they sent me. That's kind of strange, isn't it? Or is it normal? Is that a normal reaction? What do you think? You can take yourselves off mute if you want to say anything.
If it was a person,
yeah,
I would expect that kind of behavior. But Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need that he actually show him the letters.
Right. That's why I'm saying it's a little strange, right? It sounds a little strange. Okay. Right. Is he doing it for show? Is there anybody else there? Maybe.
Maybe the Kohanim there.
Maybe.
Rabbi.
Yes, I'm listening.
Mikdash is God's house, where His presence is most concentrated.
Correct. Okay.
Thereby, if you want to communicate closest to God.
Good.
No, you could pray to God anywhere in the universe. But Israel is special to God. Yerushalayim is special, and Beit HaMikdash is
100%.
the place. So that is where you bring it.
But I'm not asking. You're right. I'm not questioning why he went to Beit HaMikdash. I'm questioning why does he show Hashem the letter? He spreads it out, so to speak, on potentially the Aron. I'm going to see why I say the Aron because the next sentence, the next pasuk, potentially. But somewhere in the Beit HaMikdash, he kind of like rolls it out and says, look at this. On the one hand, it sounds strange because You don't have to show it to Hashem. On the other hand, I don't think he's showing it to Hashem. I think he's really doing it for himself, for, in a sense, saying, here, let me change that. I have a number of machzorim for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, back from the olden days in Nusach Ashkenaz, and I have, of course, a few from in Adot Mizrach. And over time, for whatever reason, I might have to grab one for a reference for something. I grab the art scroll machzor I had for Nusach Ashkenaz, and a little slip of paper falls out. I look at it. This has happened to me over the years a few times. I keep them in there for various reasons. It's names of people I wanted to daven for, need a shlema or parnasa, whatever. No different than other people do. Some people have it in their regular siddur. They keep a list of names. It's a reminder, right? But it's more than a reminder. If I say I'm going to daven for Avigdor Chai Avraham ben Rachalea, it's one thing when I have it in my mind, but I look at it on a piece of paper, I see the name, it even has a little bit more connection to me. So he's, in a sense, he's laying this out and saying to himself, this is horrible. These are horrible things this man is saying. And then he turns to Hashem and says, I need your help with this. So he's not really showing it to Hashem. He's really showing it to himself. So he has the text right in front of him. I think that's a possibility. Now, unlike last time, at the beginning of the parak, when right away he dispatches his emissaries to go and talk to Yeshayahu, he does something different here. Take a look at Pasuk Tet Vav, number 15. A second. Okay. Vatitpalel Chizkiyahu lifnei Hashem vayomar. Chizkiyahu davened to Hashem. Now I'm going to put parentheses here before I even read the rest of this pasuk. I don't think there's anybody here that was in my tefillah. No, first of all, it's for women, but there's no one here. I gave a tefillah class for women for about 6 years here in Israel, and for 10 years in Chicago, 9 years. And one of the things I tried to make very clear at the very beginning of the series of classes was the word that we use in Hebrew for to daven, which is lehitpalel. Now, before I even say that, the word daven itself is an enigma, because it's not 100% clear where it comes from. There are two possibilities. One, it's from the word divine, same kind of shoresh. The other is di avuhom, that's Aramaic for of the avot, because it says the avot, tefillot, avot tiknum, that the Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov established tefillah. Okay, but the word vayitpalel or lehitpalel, we know, if you know even a little teeny bit of Hebrew grammar, we know that word is what's called in English reflexive. It's hitpayel. It's something that you do to yourself. What do you mean? You don't daven to yourself. That's aleph. And number two, the shoresh pei lamed lamed means judge, like plilim. We say modern Hebrew, it's plili, right? So it's criminal. So what is going on here? So the essence of tefillah, again, this is weeks and weeks and weeks of shiurim, let's do it in 10 seconds, is to change yourself, to become a different person. We talked a little bit about this last week or the week before. So when a person says, you are the one who freely gives da'at and gives intellect and everything else, one should pause for a moment at least and think, what have I done with the da'at, with the knowledge and the wisdom God's given me until now? Have I used it right? Lehit palel is to judge yourself. So when you sit, not to be judgmental, to be shiputi is something very, very different. To judge yourself, to look in the mirror and say, I asked Hashem for slicha, I asked Hashem for knowledge, I've asked Hashem for refuah, I've asked Hashem, I've asked. What have I done with what he's given me so far? So that's the end of the parentheses. So again, Pasuk Tetvav, Vayitpalel Chizkiyahu lifnei Hashem vayomar, and Chizkiyahu davened to Hashem and said, Hashem Elokei Yisrael Yoshev HaKiruvim. Hashem, God of Israel, the one who sits upon the Kruvim. We're going to see in a minute the slide that will discuss this. Atahu Elohim levadecha, l'chol malachot haaretz. You are the only God, you alone, King of the earth, over the kings of the earth. Ata asita tashamayim et haaretz. You are the one who created, who fashioned the heavens and the earth. Hashem oznecha ushama. Sorry, Hatei Hashem oznecha ushama. Incline your ear, God, and listen Open your eyes, God, and see. Ushma divrei Sancheriv, and listen to the words of Sancheriv, Asher shelacho lecharep Elohim Chai, who we sent to bless, in quotes, the living God. Now, some of these words should sound familiar to you as different points of different type of nuschalot of tefillah. Okay, what exactly is going on here? What is he telling him? First question, does anything strike you a little unusual the way he speaks to Hashem? Not what he's asking, but just, is there anything unusual in the nisuach, the way it's phrased?
Very direct, second person present.
Okay.
Ata.
Okay.
Even today, when we talk to a distinguished Rav, we say Adonai Rav. We don't say Ata.
Okay, so that begs that is also the basis of another shir I give. Like, why can we say a bracha, Baruch Ata Hashem, instead of Baruch Hashem? Blah, blah, blah,
right, the same
excellent
question could be asked.
Okay,
there. Right.
Okay, so here he's talking like a friend. Okay, anything else?
I don't remember ever hearing Yosef HaKrovim before.
Okay, that's unusual in its own right.
Or me,
Good.
or
Okay, so we're going to see that. We're going to see in a minute about that. Anything else that's unusual? Okay, so I'll give you a little spoiler alert. The Eliyahu Rabbah takes him to task and says that he was very disrespectful to Hashem. Where do you see disrespect? Besides, he's speaking in second person.
he's giving commands.
Sorry?
He's giving commands. He's saying Re'eh Shema rather than
Yeah, can you imagine?
Lord.
Imagine I'm going to go to Rav Aviner. I'm going to go to some Rav and say to, would you open your eyes and just see this? Could you just open your ears and listen? Whoa. When you put it in that term, it does sound very disrespectful. And I'm putting a little bit more emphasis on it. But the Eli Rabbah we're going to see now actually does take him to task. Let's take a look. Next slide. Like all of the tzaddikim, remember we cannot lose sight of the fact, something really important. Chizkiyahu HaMelech was a true tzaddik. He was, after David, the best king until this point that the Jews had. Until after him, he's the best of the Jews, which we already had that discussion. In addition to that, we will discuss in a couple more chapters that he could have even been the Mashiach had he not done one thing wrong. This isn't it.
By the way, his manner of speech, his manner of speech does remind me of the way Moshe Rabbeinu talked to Hashem.
Right. Very good.
Just before, during
Yes.
the plagues, and during the whole process of Yitzhak.
But what's the
Yitzhak
excellent?
at
Excellent.
times.
What's the difference though between Moshe Rabbeinu and Chizkiyahu HaMelech?
Moshe ne'eman b'chol beito, according to the
Moshe,
Edut,
right, he was
the
Pe'el Pe'eh Daber. Moshe was a Navi. Chizkiyahu was not a Navi. He was a king who had a very special relationship with Hashem, who was a tzaddik, but he wasn't Moshe Rabbeinu. So you're right. It does sound like his nisuach a little bit. Let's continue. Very good. Before this, Panali Shayahu she'itpalel avuro. We saw this, that before in Pasuk Dalet, he asks Yeshayahu to daven on his behalf. Ata now, umitpalel be'atzmo. Now he's davening by himself to God. Because he needed, in a sense, for his own knowledge, that to show himself, he had complete trust in Hashem and that his tefillah would be accepted. Nevertheless, it did not turn out, we're going to see in a minute, that he doesn't get an answer from God. He gets an answer from Yeshayahu. The answer comes to Yeshayahu. How did he know what was going on? He's a prophet. In addition to that, the signon, the way he worded,
Style.
all right, the style was not appropriate. He was speaking like a person speaking to his friend. He should have, and this is Yud Gimel, is a quote I checked, there's a quote from Eliyahu Rabbah, that he should have davened, especially in this circumstance, with fear and trepidation and shaking. הכוונה כנראה בעיקר לומר בפסוק י"ז והלאה. Okay, טוב. Then he says, Hashem Elokei Yisrael Yoshev HaKiruvim, as was pointed out by Family Brownstein, that this is an unusual phrase, God who sits upon the Kruvim. Chizkiyahu koreh Hashem b'shem shenizkar gam b'sefer Tilim Pei Bet. If you look in Tilim Pei, it says there, in the tefillah mara be'et tzara. It happened to be a tefillah that was said at a time of great distress. Mitziut hashchina mi'ala kruvim bebeit hamikdash. The presence of the Shekhinah upon the kruvim in the Beit Hamikdash, he edut al kirvat Hashem Yisrael, was testimony to the connection, the closeness of Hashem to Bnei Yisrael, kesher hakayam beinehem, and the kesher that existed between them. Ha'ashurim, the Assyrians, kmo gam oivim. Just a minute, go to the next slide. Oop, jumped ahead. Achirim shel Yisrael, like any other of the enemies of the Jews. Hishtadlu lakchish mitziut kesher zeh. They tried to lakchish. Deny. Thank you. One day I'll get English again. To deny this existence of this connection. Chizkiyahu mitpalel al hitgalut b'foal shel hakesher hazeh. Chizkiyahu davens for the revelation of this connection between Am Yisrael and God to come into fruition. Ki im tipo Yerushalayim biyad tzar, because if Yerushalayim were to fall into the enemy's hand, yiplu gam hakruvim bidehem, the kruvim would also fall into their hands. V'zeh yishamesh legoyim keot. This would serve as a sign to the non-Jews. She'emunat Yisrael lo hayta mutzdeket, that the belief of Am Yisrael in God was not appropriate, was not proper, was not right or justified. K'mo shaya gam l'maaseh shekodesh hakodashim shimesh mekor rishon lela'ag hagoyim al Yisrael kasher naflu bidehem. We're going to see this down the road, that it's horrible when we get to that section, but the Kodesh Kadashim is going to be the source for like true derision from the Goyim against Am Yisrael when it falls into the hands of the non-Jews. So in a sense, what he's doing here, he's telling us that he refers to Hashem as the Yoshev HaKruvim, because he's also saying to Hashem, wait a minute, you have a stake in this game as well. You're right. It's bad enough if Sancheriv comes out and kills us, captures us, sends us into Galut. But he comes into your house and destroys your Beit HaMikdash, and especially the place of the connection between you and us. Mibein HaKruvim, it's we know that Hashem spoke to Moshe in the desert and to the future Kohen Gadol, Kohanim Gadolim, Mibein HaKruvim. This is what we can't have that. That'd be a horrible Chilul Hashem. I feel something addition to this, and I didn't look it up. It could be in some other Mefarshim. I'll tell you one thing I think also. We have it in tradition that tells us, in Midrash and a few other places, and we will see this when we get to Perek Kaf Daled Kaf Hey near the end, when things unfortunately Kaf Gimel Kaf Daled fall apart and the Beit HaMikdash is destroyed. We'll see a number of Midrashim then. It says that in Parashat Shavua coming up in a couple of weeks, when we learn about the Kruvim and the construction, it says they were facing each other. And it also says in Midrash that when Bnei Yisrael would do Ritzon Avinu Shabashamayim, when we acted the right way, Kruvim faced each other. And when we didn't, in a miraculous fashion, the Kruvim would face back to back. They wouldn't face each other. There's a Midrash that also tells us that when I'm not going to give you the whole Midrash, it's kind of long, at some point during the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, the Kruvim are facing each other, which doesn't make any sense, because if they're facing away from each other when they aren't doing the Ritzon Hashem, then why would they be facing each other at this point? Some of you, all of you probably have heard of Rabbi Pesach Kron, Shlita, a magnificent speaker, orator, Magid, and Mohel, who goes around the world doing Britot. He quotes, I don't remember where, and I'm going to have to find out before we actually get to that class in a few weeks, that they were not just facing each other, but the Kruvim were embracing each other goodbye, because they knew this is the beginning of the end, as they saw what was happening. I think that the focal point of the Beit HaMikdash, which is the Aron, which was in the Kodesh Kodashim, in the Holy of Holies, upon which sat the Kruvim, from which between the two Kruvim, the voice of Hashem emanated. It was probably, as Ari mentioned about the fact, the most concentrated place in the world of the Shekhinah, which is true, that even within the Beit HaMikdash, the most concentrated place was there above the Kruvim. It said that the voice of God, whatever that means, because there's differences of opinion, was it actually a sound, or was it just someone would hear in their mind? That when Hashem's voice would go out and emanate from between the Kruvim, by miracle, the voice would stop at the parochet, at the curtain, between the Kodesh and the Kodesh Kodashim. Okay, that's not for tonight. But I think that mentioning the Kruvim is a critical point, as the Dat Sofrim hints to, and I think others will say that it's to tell us something really important. Hashem, we know that there's a Tilim, it's not Pei, I forgot which one it is, maybe Pei Gimel. Ba'u goyim b'nachalatecha. The goyim have come into your nachala. What's that? Pei Gimel?
It does sound like Pei Gimel, yes.
Yeah, I think it's Pei Gimel. Unfortunately, we've said it many times. If you find it, let me know. Ba'u goyim b'nachalatecha. The goyim have come into your nachala, into the Beit HaMikdash, to Yerushalayim, into Beit HaMikdash for destructive purposes. And I think that's part of the reason it's being pointed out. It tells us he was in the Beit HaMikdash, but now we're talking specifically how he was addressing Hashem. But the problem was also the way he addressed Hashem was, according to Eli Rabba, was not the most appropriate way. But let's take one more look at that slide and finish that couple comments of the Dat Sofrim over here. It says, Atahu Elokin levadecha. Keneged divrei melech Ashur, as a counter to the words of the king of Assyria, who saw the world as filled with idols, because he said, hey, the idol of this country didn't help them, the idol of that country didn't help them. Umachriz, Chizkiyahu announces, milvad Hashem. There's no other king besides God, there is no other God, there is no other God, there is no other God. L'chol mamlechot haaretz, af ki yesh sarim memunim me'Hashem al kol hagoyim. En lem erech atzmi, הם שלוחי השם בדרגה עליונה כפי רצון השם. אין להם אלא מה שהשם נותן להם. This is an interesting statement. The people who rule countries do so because that's in Ratzon Hashem. At least this is what he's saying here. That it says that they are the shluchim, that they are the messengers of Hashem, for good or bad. Not that Hashem sends for good or for bad. However they act, whatever they do. When we will have our 14th or 15th election, by the time we get it straight, and my grandchildren are able to vote in that election probably, and we'll finally maybe have some kind of government that actually knows what they're doing, then whoever it is also a shaliach of Hashem. There's also Hashem is moving around the pieces on planet Earth for the benefit of how Hashem's plan is meant to be. So
it's Ayin Tet, not Pei Gimel.
It's Ayin Tet?
Ayin Tet, yes.
Ayin Tet, okay. Yes, thank you. Is that the one that starts off Mizmor LaAsaf?
Hold on a minute.
It says
yes, Mizmor LaAsaf.
Okay, so you have to ask yourself, right. So I'll ask a question. I'll ask a question I'm not going to answer. Feel free to look into it. There is it's not a midrash. I forgot where it is. It says Mizmor LaAsaf. It's a song. It should be Kina LaAsaf. It should be an eulogy or an elegy. What does that mean? How do you say Mizmor? So don't answer it. If you know, that's something you guys can look in. You guys, I'm sorry, I should never say that. You find upstanding individuals, citizens of the best country on the planet Earth, the only planet that counts. Look it up yourselves. Ayin Tet, number 79. Why does it start Mizmor LaAsaf, a song of Asaf, and not Kina LaAsaf, a eulogy or an elegy? Now, let's read a few more lines here. Pasuk Yud Zayin, Yud Chet, Yud Tet, which will conclude the tefillah, because we haven't seen it. All he's done so far is he said, hello Hashem, please listen. I'm saying it nicely. Yud Zayin, number 17. Omnam, in this case, the word omnam, which can generally be translated as however. In this case, it means achen. It means, I write down, yeah, achen. Hashem. Hecharivu malchei Ashur et hagoyim ve'et artzam. V'natnu et Elohehem ba'esh. Ki lo Elohim hema. Ki maseh yedei adam eitz va'even va'ya'abdum. Says, you know what? These things that Sancheriv's been saying really did happen. He did crush many countries, and their gods didn't do anything, obviously, because they're just wood and stone. V'ata Hashem Elokeinu, and now Hashem, our God, Hoshi'enu na miado, save us from his hand. V'yedu, now, not just, he's not looking just for salvation. He doesn't want to just that the Bnei Yisrael don't get smashed, but v'yedu kol mamlechot haaretz ki ata Hashem Elokim levadecha. All people should know that you are the only God. So maybe he saves himself a little bit here with this final statement. Because now we also understand what he's telling Hashem is that this is a chilul Hashem. This, who was the one who said it sounds similar to Moshe Rabbeinu? Danny, was it you? It's about similar to Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, so this is a similar tactic that Moshe Rabbeinu had. Where do we see it? So where Hashem said, okay, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm just going to wipe out Am Yisrael, start over with you. And then Moshe said to him, what? How can that be? What's going to happen? Everyone's going to hear that you were strong enough to take them out of Mitzrayim, but then you couldn't. You didn't have the ability to take them to your land. It's going to be a chilul Hashem. So when a leader of Am Yisrael is davening on behalf of Am Yisrael, he also points out, or has pointed out over the centuries, that what Hashem's plan is, or what seems to be in the offing, the leader turns to God and say, it can't happen like that. It's bad enough that it's going to happen to us physically. Fine, we're just humans. But what's worse is a chilul Hashem. Chilul Hashem is one of the worst things that a Jewish person can do. Don't let that happen. And this is pretty much how he ends his tefillah. Okay. We'll look at one more slide. This one, this. Actually, no, I don't. I take that back. Okay, here's what I want to do. Let me just take out here just a minute. I want to read to you a bunch of psukim. I'm going to read them and translate them. We're not going to look at any depth whatsoever tonight. I just want you to hear Yeshayahu's response to this tefillah that Chizkiyahu makes to Hashem. I'm going to start reading from Pasuk Kaf, number 20. Vayishlach Yeshayahu ben Amoz el Chizkiyahu lemor. Yeshayahu sent a message to Chizkiyahu saying, Komar Hashem Elokei Yisrael, so as Hashem, God of Israel, said, Asher hitpalalta elai el Sancheriv, melech Ashur shamati. The tefillah you said to me about Sancheriv, I have heard it. Zeh davar asher diber Hashem alav. This is the word of Hashem. He has spoken about him. Let me just read and translate. Obviously, there'll be a lot of depth here. We'll do some of it next week. Bazalecha la'agal lecha bitulat bat Zion, acharecha rosh heinia bat Yerushalayim. She scorns you. She mocks you. I'm just reading the English. She, the maiden, the daughter of Zion, she shakes her head at you. She, the daughter of Jerusalem. Et mi cherachta v'gidafta. Whom have you insulted and blasphemed? Vel mi harimot kol. And against whom have you raised your voice? Vatisam arom einecha al kadosh Yisrael. You lifted your eyes on high against Hashem, God of Israel. Biyad malachecha cherafta Adonai. By the hand of your messengers, you have insulted God. Vatomer, and you said, Berov richbi ani aliti marom harim yarketei Levanon. You said, with my many, many chariots, I climbed the highest mountain to the ends of Lebanon forest. He's making fun right now of Sancheriv. Oh, this is what you thought you're going to do, huh? Right? This is what you claim. And I shall enter his ultimate abode, the forest of his fruitful field. Ani karti vishatiti mayim zarim. I dug and drank unknown waters. And for the soles of my feet dried up all the rivers of the besieged area. Have you not heard of the distant past, the things I've done? Lemimei kedem bitzartiha, atah utihi lahashot galim nitzim arim b'tzurot. Have you not heard about the distant past? From the earliest days I have formed it. Now I have brought it about to raise it into desolate heaps, your fortified cities. V'yoshvehen kitzrayad chatu ve'evoshu. The people who lived there were short of power, crushed and ashamed. Hayu esev sadeh virak deshe chatzir gagot. They were like the herbs of the field and grassy vegetation, like grass on rooftops, like stalks, wind blasted before standing full. Hashem says through the Navi, I know everything going on through your mind. I also know how much you provoke me. Because you provoked me, and your arrogance has come up to my ears, I'm going to put my hook in your nose, and my bridle. The bridle is the thing you put onto a horse, on your lips. I'm going to turn you around from whence you came. Get on your right on your high horse, and you and Toto too. And this will be for you a sign. This year you're going to eat safiach, which is like little growths that grow by themselves. And the second year you're going to eat fruit from tree stumps. In the third year, and in the third year they're going to sow and they're going to harvest and plant vineyards and eat their fruits. And the survivors that remained in the house of Yehuda shall take root below and produce fruit above. Obviously, this is a tremendous amount of metaphor. From Yerushalayim, there shall emerge a sherit upleta, the remnant and the survivors. Mehar Tzion, kinat Hashem tzvakot ta'aseh zot. The Hashem, the jealous God, the God of zealousness, will do all this. So just as basically this, what I've read until now basically breaks down into two statements. Number one, you think you're all high and mighty? Really? You think because you killed some people, you took over some land, that you're going to stand in the face of God? I know all your plans. I know what you're going to do. And let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to wipe you out. Lachen, therefore, therefore Hashem has said about the king of Assyria, Lo yavo el ha'ir hazot. You are not going to enter the city. Not only that, v'lo yorech sham chetz. You're not even going to shoot an arrow at it. Lo yikad mena magen. And you're not even going to come near it with a shield. Lo yishpoch aleha solelan. You're not even going to put a ramp up against it. But derech asher yavo ba yashuv. The same way you came here, you're going to return. God says you are not even going to return. You're not even going to enter. I, Hashem, shall protect the city and save it. The ma'ani, for my sake, Laman David Avdi, and for the sake of my servant David. Now, we obviously will not be covering all that next week, because to do this properly, we need to look at pasuk by pasuk, or chunks of this, a couple of psukim at a time. That is a very good representation of the type of nevuot you see in Sefer Yeshayahu, which you can understand why the Sefer Yeshayahu is massive and very, very deep. I'm not saying that any other Navi is not, chas v'shalom, but Yeshayahu is extremely flowery, metaphorical, similes, speaking in all kinds of ways. And everything that we read, with the exception of that which was more or less normal Tanakh Tanakh Hebrew, has depth to it that goes beyond just the plain meaning of the text. So Bezrat Hashem, what we're going to do starting next week, it'll take us a little while, is to go into this particular nevuah. And we have to also leave us a question like, why not just say to Chizkiyahu from Yeshayahu, Aleph, Hashem heard your tefillah, Bet, don't worry, it's going to be all good, just like he did before. He basically said, if one pasuk nevuah, why do I need 15 psukim for another nevuah? We're not going to answer that question so fast, but I will remind you your homework. In Perek Ayin Tet, number 79, Mizmor la'asaf ba'u goyim benachalatecha. A song of Asaf, the strange nations have come into your inheritance. So it is asked, Mizmor la'asaf, question mark, exclamation point. It should be Kina le'asaf, an elegy for Asaf, because it talks about, you'll see. Okay, see if you can find an answer. And send me a private message, and we'll see if what it'll do well for you on your final exam. At the end of 120 years. Yeah, you didn't know there's a final exam for your Toar Shlishi, for your doctorate. So, I want to wish everyone a Shavua Tov, which should be a week of health, Bezrat Hashem. Let's end this madness, and I'm not talking about just the corona, maybe Yavin's craziness in our country, and B'Sor Tovot. All right, Laila Tov.
Well.
Well.